Hey folks, this is Spey Fishing with John, High Water Tactics, episode 2. You may recall in the first episode that I told you about how cameraman Chris likes to give me a hard time about not catching fish on film. Well, lo and behold, he went out the next day after we filmed that and got a fish in the same spot. Now he claims he was swinging a fly. I don't know, I wasn't there, I didn't witness it, but you'll have to decide for yourself. Anyway, enjoy the show. All right, so here we are at our next spot, and we've got kind of heavier chop water, but it's heavy and soft, but it has some depth and it's got enough current speed that I'm not going to try to target the inside, because once this soft seam kind of ends, the fly's not going to swing very far. So I've decided I'm going to try to catch a fish out in the heavier water because I know there's good holding spots there for them. So I've got 12 feet of T14 and a weighted fly here. And as I fish through, I'll know if that's too heavy. If I start hanging up before I get across, then I'll grab a rod that has 10 feet of T14 and I'll kind of work it that way. So sometimes it's an educated guess. 12 feet of T14, weighted fly, see what happens. So as I study this water here, I've got a real good current coming in here, a heavy outside current, and then there's a nice soft spot in the middle. So I got to cast over this heavier current, get a good mend, fixer mend, and then I'm going to hold my rod up nice and high, get my fly to slow down in that middle current before this heavier current catches it and brings it across. So that's kind of my initial plan here. As I work further down, these currents will kind of blend and become one, and it'll be kind of a steadier current. And it'll fish better as I get more line out. Right now, the head of my line, because I'm casting shorter, it's getting caught in this fast current here. It's swinging a little faster. Once I get the head of the line over this current into that middle and far current, it's going to swing even better. And I'm holding that rod way out there to slow the swing down, change the pivot point of the swing. I heard those words from Mike McCune years ago when we fished together for the first time. We were fishing a spot, and I probably told this story before. If you've heard it, fast forward. But we were fishing a spot, and he said, you know, there's a rock out there that'll hold a fish, make a cast, get it mended, hold the rod out, and slow the swing down. So I cast out there, made the mend, nothing happened. He says, nope, hold it out further. So I cast again, made the mend, held it out. Nope, you gotta really stick that rod out there. You really gotta slow that swing down. So he says, make your cast. So I made a cast, I made the mend, and he walks over and he grabs the rod with my hand still on the rod, and he holds that rod way out there. And that fly slowed down just enough that I got grabbed. I missed the fish, but I got grabbed. I'll never forget that moment, because it just took a little bit more to get that fly slowed down. I really had to reach out there, and that's when I heard the words from him, you got to change the pivot point of the swing. So there's a big mend, my fixer mend, and I'm going to really reach out here, slow it down out in that middle soft spot before I catch this faster current. And so when I hit that faster current, it's not going to swing it out too fast. It's nice and slow already, and I'm in the game the whole swing. I did a little 2-minute drill on mending recently, and you know, the thing about mending is every mend's different, every situation's different. It's hard to define, do this here, do that there. I talked about 2 general examples, but line control, mending, swing speed. It's all something that you have to kind of feel out each swing. As I add line, all that changes. And as you do it, you'll learn to recognize water and what the water's going to do to your swing and your fly and how it's going to fish. And so you'll kind of learn to anticipate, yeah, it's going to take a big mend and a little fixer mend or not or whatever. And so that'll eventually just come more instinctively and set you up for success as you fish through a run. Be less time wasted making the wrong mend. And you know, my biggest pet peeve, just as a fly fishing guide in general, whether it's trout fishing or steelhead fishing, is that automatic upstream mend. And I don't know who taught everybody that as soon as your fly hits the water, you do the same upstream mend every time. But it seems like that's programmed in a lot of people's minds. And often that's the case, but it's not always the case. So that just comes with being on the water and experimenting. Here I know I need a big mend and that little fixer mend. No big hurry on that one. I kind of want my fly to anchor a little bit, to sink a little bit before I make that second little fixer mend, because I don't want to pull my fly up or move my fly when I make that second mend. So if I let it anchor a little bit, there's a little more resistance. So when I make that mend, it just pivots the line instead of pulling the line. Now I'm fishing 12 feet of T14 and a weighted fly. I have not even sniffed the bottom, so I feel like I made a good choice. Just the way the top of this run sets up, the inside is so slow that, you know, once my fly comes to here, it's not going to swing to the bank. It's just not going to happen. So I'm really fishing from here out. And to maximize my fishing, I've gone with a heavier sink tip, so my fly fishes deeper earlier. And even a straight hang down here, I'm not touching bottom. And right now it's just crawling across this chop. It's just perfect. So as I work down, I might find that it's, you know, I gotta go lighter or just cut my swing off earlier and hope I'm not missing a fish on the inside. So I've gone with an 8 weight here. This is a older Sage 1, 12.5 foot 8 weight. The Sage 1 series has been replaced by the X series. And so the improved version of this rod would be the 12 foot 8 weight, which is just awesome. I don't own one yet, but I will soon. But I'm kind of in a short rod spot. I don't have a lot of room to make a D-loop. And, you know, winter steelhead, I fish a lot of 7 weights, and I have a few 8 weights I like to fish, but a nice short, fast 8 weight will get a lot of work done in a lot of spots. And once I get up, you know, in that 12 plus feet of T14 range, it's nice to have an 8 weight to deliver that sink tip. And these rods are so light. I have older 6 and 7 weights that are heavier than these new 8 weights. So as far as the weight of the rod in your hands, it's just no big deal. Oh. Now that was not a great cast. The shooting line got caught in my fingers. And yeah, I could have fished it, but you know what? I've already fished up to my total length that I'm casting. So in theory, I could have fished it. It would have been a shorter cast. Water I covered when I was up there. So when I make a bad cast, I just strip in, recast. I don't like to waste a swing. I don't like to make a bad cast. As you're learning, yeah, you're gonna make bad casts. But I want my fly to turn over, and that way I know it's gonna fish the way I want to fish. If I dump a cast out there and it just doesn't, but by the time it pulls tight and swings, the swing might be over. To me, that's a wasted cast. So I don't like to fish bad casts. Depending on where you live, an 8-weight two-handed rod might not be your first rod. If you live in BC, yeah, go buy an 8-weight. If you're on big water, you do a lot of winter steelhead or whatever the size of water, maybe an 8-weight your first rod. In general, 7-weight is our first rod. 7-weight's great for summer steelhead, great for winter steelhead. Fish a lot of 7-weights in BC, the OP, wherever you're at, you're gonna fish 7-weight. But having a good 8-weight will just make throwing the big stuff, heavier sink tips, bigger flies, much more enjoyable. And then when you do hook that big fish, it's gonna be a more even fight. You're gonna have the ability to tire that fish out. I gotta say, we've got high water. We're the only ones out here today. And I got the first 2 spots we fished have just been amazing. This swing here, I couldn't ask for a nicer swing. We could fish this run at even higher water if we had to. This just seems like primo for this spot. This spot fishes good at a lot of different flows. And that's, when you talk about, or when you think about fishing high water, well, you got to find the water, right? Well, a broad run with a big gravel bar, that has room to grow. There's those spots that are a little tighter. You just can't fish them. You can't fish them in high water. This particular spot has a lot of room to grow, and it actually, the top of this is swinging. It's incredible. It's an incredible swing at these flows. It's a little trial and error involved. You just got to find those spots. Remember what the flow chart says, what the CFS is, or feet, however you like to measure flows. Take notes, or just remember, gosh, at 5,000 or 8,000 or whatever it was, I like the way this and that spot fished. The water's more green than brown today. We've got, like I said earlier, at least 3 feet of visibility. If we had 2 feet of visibility, I'd be just as confident. If it's more green than brown, you're in the game. Sometimes you can get them in brown water, but brown water often means there's other stuff floating down, trees and limbs and leaves. And sometimes you fight pulling stuff off your fly all day or whatever the case, but this water condition today is just perfect. I know a fish can see my fly from at least 5 feet away, maybe further. Got a fly on here I've been playing with. I call it a 7-layer burrito. I named it that because it has some fish taco type qualities to it, including ostrich. I threw a orange hot bead on it, and it's kind of a dressed up version of or just a different version of a Hickman's fish taco. Thank you, Jeff. But it's just a big, I wouldn't call it an intruder, but it's just a big wiggly fly, the ones we like to fish. People call a lot of flies intruders these days. Intruders become more of a category for flies that are on a shank, are more than a couple inches long, wiggle. I used to get a little fussy and offended by somebody calling any big steelhead fly an intruder. Like, well, that's not an intruder. If it doesn't look like Ed's, Jerry's, or Scott's fly, that ain't an intruder. But it's really become a category. Now I'm doing a cack-handed double spey here. I'm casting out into some faster water, and the double spey likes to go out across, you know, say 90 degrees or a little bit down. I'm already facing downstream because that's what I'm going to face when I swing the fly. So the double spey, I've got room for my D-loop. It just works right here. It's easy. I could snap T or do some other cast, but if I snap T, I got to turn. It just, and plus, I want this angle. Double spey goes better this way. Snap T goes better that way. So right now, the double spey just gives my fly more time to sink. I'm already facing downstream, so I'm just going to keep rocking this cast. This might be the best water we fished today. It's just incredible. It's incredible. Still have 12 feet of T14 on, weighted fly. I haven't sniffed bottom yet. I kind of feel like I should have already, but I haven't. I'm going to keep rolling with it. My fly's coming across. This soft water on the inside, there's a little bit of an eddy. You know, if it was an even current and the water was pushing down, the fly would swing to the bank, but the way it kind of swirls around, fish doesn't want to hold in that. So I'm not worried about, in this spot, fishing to the bank. I think fish are going to be from here out. I'm covering that water. If they want to eat my fly, I'd just be really much obliged. My only concern is that all these cattle over here are laying down except for one. And they say when you're on your way to go hunting, if cattle and horses are on their feet, then so will the deer and elk. Well, what that speaks to me is game activity. And so I haven't gotten a peck from a trout, be it a juvenile steelhead or a cutthroat, whatever. So maybe it's all connected. You know, we talk about barometric pressure and solunar tables and all that stuff. If these cows are up and more active, I might be a little more confident that I'm going to get a fish. Or if I'm, you know, see a fish rise or I get a grab or whatever. But there's going to be that point in every day where there's things come alive. You know, if I'm out and I don't see birds flying, trout nipping, trout rising, animal activity, I don't see a deer, I don't see an eagle, I might be a little nervous, like, well, it's just things aren't turned on. But there's that point in every day where animals have to feed, be it a fish, a deer, whatever. And so that's usually when you're going to get a fish. And it's a matter of just waiting for that moment. Now, that doesn't mean I won't get a fish here, but I want to see those cows stand up. That one down there, he's chewing on a tree limb. I don't know, maybe scratching his beard. But if there's 10 fish in here, I only need one of them to be turned on. There's one cow down there that's turned on. That's the fish I'm trying to catch, that one right there. You're not going to catch every fish. There's one fish in this run, I'm not going to catch him unless he's just absolutely suicidal and our paths cross. There's 10 fish in this run, I'm in the game. Got to be one or two or three or who knows, fish that want to play. Well, I started up there in, knee deep, thigh deep water maybe. Now I'm here in waist deep water. It gets harder to cast as you wade deeper because essentially your rod gets shorter, and I've covered this in different things we've done. But as you wade deeper, your rod gets shorter. That changes the height of your rod off the water as you make your sweep, your D-loop stroke. So you're fighting more resistance the lower your rod comes across. So to make the same cast you made up there in shallower water, you just have to increase the height and speed of your D-loop stroke to get the same result. So the height and speed of my D-loop stroke has to just increase a little bit to get the same result. For more on that, watch the Spey casting equation video on our YouTube page. So as you watch my D-loop here, you should see, it's a 12-foot sink tip. You should see a little bit of my sink tip out of the water right at that moment. Part of my, tangle. Part of my, show you that again. Right at that moment, boom. Happens quick, but sink tip's black, line's orange, or line might be blue or green or whatever. But look for that connection between your sink tip and Spey line, and that you just should see that creep out a little bit when your D-loop forms, and that'll tell you how much your sink tip is in or out of the water at that moment in time. A lot of visual cues in Spey casting, which I rely on for consistency. They give me feedback. A lot of parts to a Spey cast, but the anchor D-loop relationship is key to a successful cast. So the height and speed here determine what happens here, okay? Height and speed determines what happens here. Spey casting equation, check out that video. Well, this water's so good I could have fished the whole run, but I'm gonna cut it off there. We got more water to fish. Go see what happens.